unacceptable diagnosis. It is completely a BS diagnosis. Now, don't get me wrong. Do not get up in arms. Don't start, with your comments yet. That doesn't mean that your symptoms aren't real, right? Your symptoms are super real, but it is not acceptable because I just don't like the label of IBS. It is a cop-out diagnosis given to people who have lots of belly issues, but the medical community can't find anything wrong with them. So if you have bloating, IBS, diarrhea, IBS, constipation, cramping, you name it, all of it is IBS. Just doesn't make sense. So people with IBS are constantly in pain. Some of you are constantly searching for the bathroom, uncomfortable. And the worst part is that if you've been given the diagnosis, it means you actually asked for help already, right? You actually went to a medical provider and they did the thing and they gave you this diagnosis. So, and that just means there's nothing more conventional medicine could do. They tap out. They're like, done. Okay, you have IBS, nothing I could do for you. So if you've been given the diagnosis of IBS, or maybe you're not sure, you haven't been given the official diagnosis, but you have a whole bunch of belly issues, this episode is super important for you. So if you are one of those people who are suffering from IBS, or if you don't know if you have IBS, but you have some of the symptoms and you're curious, we're going to talk about what it is, how to get to the root cause of what it actually is, and why it even matters. Okay, let's talk about it. Why does it matter? Who cares? Your belly hurts. It matters. So before I do that, I always want to let you know how to reach me and my team. So we're basically the new method everywhere. New is spelled with a K because you always knew there was a better way. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, podcast. This is where we're at. And of course, the website, thenewmethod.com. Ask a question. Even if it's not about IBS, we're going to answer. Trust me, on any platform that you put a message, we have someone answering. And of course, if you want to become a game changer, you want to work with me and my team, then go on thenewmethod.com/consult and schedule a consult. Let's get going. And no matter what, don't forget to share this episode with someone that you love. They have these symptoms so that they can become the game changers in their lives. So let's start. So here's the deal. If you have a lot of stomach pain, cramps, diarrhea, constipation, bloating, I always say this. If you're new to my community, hear me out. The first thing you have to do is see your GI. You can't skip the step. I always tell you, do not diagnose yourself. Whether it's GI issues, whatever's going on, always go to your medical provider first. Get the colonoscopy, get the endoscopy, get the H. pylori test, whatever. Get all the tests that they recommend. Do not skip this step. Their job is really important. Their job is to make sure that you don't have anything worse, right? That you don't have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or cancer. So it's okay to, at the end of all this, be told everything is fine. That's okay. That's good news. It just means you don't have the biggies, and now it's time to move on, okay? But you don't skip that step. Let me just tell you what the medical criteria is for IBS and what it is and what it isn't medically, and then we'll jump into what we do next. So the criteria is that it includes belly pain and discomfort for at least 1 day a week in the last 3 months. Now, most of you listening are like, 1 day a week, sis, it's like every day. I know, but that's the definition. And it also has to occur with at least 2 of the following: pain and discomfort related to bowel movements, defecation, a change in the frequency of defecation, so sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little, or a change in stool consistency, diarrhea, constipation. Here are some of the things not related to IBS. If you have any of the things I'm going to tell you, I need you to stop this episode and go make an appointment with your GI because it's not IBS, okay? If there's any GI bleeding, if you're bleeding, it's not IBS, time to go. If you have iron deficiency anemia, time to go. Unintentional weight loss, if you have a mass in your belly, of course. If there's a family history of colon cancer and you haven't had the proper colonoscopy, you need to do that. And if you've never had symptoms and now all of a sudden it starts after age 50 and you've not had a colon cancer screening, you haven't had the colonoscopy, or if there's something sudden or acute, okay? So any of those things happening, I need you to go to the GI. Don't skip that. Again, if you did all that and you're here, you're in the right place. So you get the endoscopy, you get the colonoscopy. They can't find anything wrong with you. And so you get the diagnosis of IBS. Now, some of you at first feel great. You're like, okay, I finally have a diagnosis, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Sounds pretty fancy. I have a thing. And you kind of feel validated for a while. But eventually you realize it's not actually a diagnosis. It's a lack of any other diagnosis. And the problem is that once you're given that diagnosis, there's no solution for it. So you have the symptoms and you have a name for it. And now what do? Nothing. You're not given anything, maybe a medication for the symptoms, a medication for reflux, a medication for constipation, a medication for diarrhea, but nothing's actually solved, right? Nothing. So let's unpack what irritable bowel syndrome is. The name says it all. It's a syndrome, a collection of symptoms that are just bundled together in a syndrome. And it suggests that you just happen to have a bowel that's irritable, right? Irritable bowel syndrome. You just named what you have. And there's nothing to do about it because your bowels are irritable. They're just easy to trigger. But that's not the answer. The answer is, what is irritating it? Why is it getting irritated to begin with? I wasn't just born with a bowel that's irritated. Like, what's going on? Why is it getting so irritated? That's the question. So let's start with some simple steps to figure out what's going on, what's irritating, okay? Because otherwise, we're never going to get to it, okay? Don't just accept that, oh, what can I do? My belly's sensitive. No, your belly's not just sensitive. Something's happening. Now, some of these steps are going to be a little obvious, but you can't skip the basics. Some of you like to run out for the fancy tests, and I'm going to talk about those tests, and there's nothing wrong with the tests, but don't go there first. Let's do some basics that we could do for free before you start spending money on the test. My patients who have IBS, the first thing I tell them, start a food diary. For many people with IBS, it's really just, for some people, it's really simple. It's their belly telling them, hey, I really don't like what you just fed me. It's a revolution. Now, here's the kicker. It's usually something that you love. You eat it all the time, and you refuse to imagine that it could be the thing that's causing your issue, because it didn't cause your issue 10 years ago. You've been eating it for the past 20 years. You eat it every day or every other day. That can't be the thing. I see this all the time. People say, I've given up everything and my belly still hurts. But did you? Did you give up everything? Or are there still 2 or 3 things that you put on the list of things that you're saying to yourself, no, that can't be the thing. Can't be my thing, right? Right. So it's obvious if you eat like a greasy burger and fries that your belly's going to hurt. It's a little less obvious to convince yourself that that healthy salad you're eating is causing your IBS. Or the oatmeal that you have every single morning, it's oatmeal, but cranberries in it. I'm super healthy. This can't be the thing. It could be the thing, because it could actually be something that you've categorized in your mind as healthy, and it's actually the thing that's irritating you. I see it all the time. So a food diary for 1 week is a critical start. You write down what you eat, and you also write down when you have flare-ups. You might be amazed at what you discover, okay? And try to write down the timing also, like how far from the meal did it start? Because food that hurts immediately or 20 minutes after a meal is different than the belly pain that's 2 hours after a meal. I'll tell you more about that later. So you write down everything you eat. I know it's annoying, but just like a week or 2, not forever. And it's not for making changes yet. It's just for documenting your symptoms. So write down what you eat, when you have belly pain, and see if you can time it so you can figure out how close it is to the meal. And remember, sometimes it's a healthy food. So keep an open mind when you write your food diary. Don't say, I'm not going to write this down because there's no way it could be the carrot. It could be the carrot, okay? So write it down. Don't have biases. Just write it down. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to try an elimination diet. In our practice, we have something called the Renew diet. And of course, Renew is spelled with a K because you always knew there's a better way. And we never stop. We're on brand all the time. So our Renew diet basically removes grains, sugars, dairies, legumes, fruits, and starchy vegetables. Now, if your symptoms go away while you're on this diet, you know what? Your belly was triggered by something. You don't have an irritable bowel. You have a bowel that was irritated by something that we remove. And we usually recommend staying on that for 3 to 4 weeks. Take some supplements to heal the belly, add a probiotic, and then you slowly and methodically reintroduce your foods. And you start paying attention to see if any of the symptoms come back. If something triggers it, it's out. And right, it's done. Now, the thing is, to do this, if you're going to do it this way, you have to do the full elimination diet first. Some of you do it where you eat your normal diet and then you just remove one thing at a time. Oh, let me remove my coffee for a week and see if that helps. Oh, no, it didn't help. Oh, let me remove my oatmeal for a week. But it doesn't work as well that way because it could be more than one thing triggering it. So it's best to do the elimination diet first. Calms down the belly. You start feeling like a human being again. And then when you reintroduce, you can really pinpoint what those things are. So that's the recommended way to do it. And again, the elimination diet is not forever. It's exploratory. It's discovery. It's time to figure out like what's going on. All right. So we have the food diary. We have the elimination diet. Those are kind of quick and easy ways to start getting to the bottom of IBS. But let's dig a little deeper, because at the heart of most people's IBS symptoms is an issue with their microbiome. If you don't already know what a microbiome is, first of all, that means you have not been watching my episodes, so get on that. Let's just do a quick Cliff Notes version. You have an entire world of bacteria in your belly. It's called the microbiome, and it's a key part of how we survive. The bacteria in there are so important to keep us balanced, and when the bacteria is balanced, they give us the things we need, hormones, neurotransmitters, you name it, they make it. But when things are not balanced, they cause havoc. So let me give you an example of what I mean, how the microbiome gives you the symptoms of IBS. Let's talk about a really common symptom, food baby. Food baby, when you eat a meal and then you look pregnant for a while. Food baby, I used to get food baby all the time, and I would name the baby. Every time I'd give it a different name. It was a game in the house. So bloating happens. Why does bloating happen? Bloating it's not really, what is it? Is it your belly that just suddenly has air in it? Bloating, yes, it's air, and it feels tight, and it feels full, and sometimes it's painful. But the bloating actually comes not from your belly. Humans don't make the air. We don't make the gas. The bacteria inside your belly make that. It is their product, their byproduct. They get something, they eat it, and then they off-gas. So all gas in the belly is made by bacteria. So if you have a gas, bloating, distension, food baby issue, guess what? That's your bacteria in your belly having a party, having a feast, and making gas. So your body, it's the bacteria's reaction to the food. So microbiome at the heart of bloating is actually a bacterial problem for so many people. There's an imbalance in the microbiome. That's why an elimination diet often works, because when you remove the offending foods, the foods that get these bacteria going, you start realizing which foods can do that. Now, there are times, of course, that I hear people who say, really and truly, I have removed everything. I've done the elimination diet and I still get bloated. That's when it's time to consider other options. And there is many, so we're just going to go through a few, okay? First, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO. So we're supposed to be lots of bacteria in your stomach, in your small intestine, in your large intestine. They're supposed to be there. But for some of us, there's a little bit too much of bacteria or a certain type of bacteria in your small intestine, SIBO. So now when food gets there, there's too much bacteria, not the right kind of bacteria. They eat the food and produces a lot of gas and pain. So you get this bloating, this pain. And in this case, it's not enough to just remove the foods, because as soon as you put them back in, you're going to be right back where you started. So in this case, you also have to eliminate the bacteria. So SIBO can be diagnosed with a breath test. You drink a liquid and then you breathe into a bag. You seal the bag, you send that bag over to the lab. What's happened in that test is that liquid activates the bacteria in your belly. And when they wake up, they produce methane and hydrogen, which you breathe into this bag. And if the lab detects the methane or the hydrogen in the bag, you have SIBO. In that case, if you have SIBO, if you're positive for SIBO, you're going to need antibiotics. You have to take care of the overgrowth. Until you do that, you won't feel better. And then after the treatment, you can retest and then heal and take probiotics, etc. Now, speaking of antibiotics, we would be remiss in talking about belly problems if we didn't have a moment to talk about antibiotics, because they can also contribute to the microbiome issue and to IBS. Of course, antibiotics are important. You're never going to hear me be anti-medication. We use it when we need it, okay? Antibiotics are an important medication that kills bacteria, and there's no doubt that there are times that we need it. But many of us get it, too much of it. We either get it in our food, in the milk that we drink. Many of us in my age group, when we were little, our parents gave us antibiotics too often for every little thing when we were younger. And, that affected it. But some of you still out there right now, every time you get a little cold, you show up at my office or another medical provider's office and say, hey, give me some antibiotics. I want to nip it in the bud. I want to get ahead of it. That's not how antibiotics work. Don't run to get antibiotics every time you have a little cold, okay? You're just messing up your microbiome. Don't do that. Why does that happen, right? I'm so sorry for being breathless on this fall allergy time season for me. What's going on there, right? Antibiotics, they don't just go in and kill the one bacteria that's making you sick. They go and they kill everything, right? They just destroy everything. And so they destroy the good and the bad that's not targeted. So they clear out some of the bacteria that we really, really need. And we need a really balanced ecosystem in there. And if you keep taking antibiotics, you're obliterating the good bacteria. And now all you're left with are the stuff That's not so good. Either pathogens or, just things that are just, we don't want to be in there. So we need the good bacteria to help digest our food. We need the good bacteria to help repair our lining. And if we keep taking antibiotics, we ruin that. And by the way, it's not curing your cold. You just got better anyway. Other medications that can mess with our microbiome, antacids, acid blocking drugs, completely messes with microbiome. And this is something that people don't realize because acid blocking drugs are so popular. It's the third leading class of drugs sold in America. Okay, Prilosec, Protonix, Nexium, all those drugs. They're given out like candies. And they cause serious issues in the belly, for your bones. We're never going to get into that. But people take them because they have reflux. So the thinking is, oh my God, I feel acid. I feel burning. I must have too much acid. I did a whole episode on this. I must have too much acid. So let me take this medication to block the acid. And they're like, it feels so much better. I must really need this medication because it feels so much better. But it's a huge problem because now you've taken something that's changed the pH in your belly, right? pH, how acidic it is in your belly. It's supposed to be acidic. And once you take that medication and lower that, the pH changes. Now, bacterial overgrowth, there's fungal overgrowth, because now they're like, oh my God, there's no acid around here. And the things that shouldn't grow. This environment changes. So the inhabitants in your belly, literally inhabitants, live things in your belly changes. So you might be like, oh, my heartburn went away because of these meds. But what you do is you're giving yourself symptoms of IBS because you've messed with your microbiome. And now you have the bloating and you have all these things. And this is a known problem. When these medications came out, they were intended for short-term use. But people use them for years. They use them daily for years and years and years. And this creates a new problem. Now, not only does it cause the bloating and the microbiome issues, but it also causes nutritional deficiencies, can cause osteoporosis. I did a whole episode on what acid reflux really is. So go, take your time and watch that. But I want you to understand that if you're on that, you're creating a new problem and you might be developing the symptoms of IBS. By the way, I am not telling you to stop taking your meds. Never. I would never tell you to do that. I'm just saying you want to work with someone who can help you get to the root cause and slowly taper off. Okay? Don't just stop taking meds. I'm always worried that someone's going to say, oh, you know what? E told me to come off the meds. I didn't say that. Okay? Maybe you heard that, but I didn't say that. So, by the way, there's some great stool tests out there that you can tell if you have the right kind of bacteria. There's stool tests out there that could tell you what's going on with your microbiome. And if you're interested, I love a company called Genova. I am not affiliated. I do not make money by telling you about Genova. They're just a really good company. And the test is called GI Effect. But I save those tests for patients that have already tried the things that I already told you about, right? Because they're expensive and we can usually get people feeling better without the test. But I want to let you know it exists if you want to do it. Coming back to other things that can cause microbiome issues and IBS issues, lactose intolerance. Now, lactose intolerance is not the same thing as a milk allergy. So you can go get tested for a milk allergy, get the skin test, and be negative. But you still could be lactose intolerant. So a milk allergy, like a true allergy, means you have the milk and you have like a histamine reaction to it. It's called an IgE reaction to it. You need Benadryl. Milk intolerance is a whole different issue. Usually, it's because you don't have enough enzyme called lactase. Lactase helps break down the lactose. So you eat dairy, the lactase breaks it down and it's absorbed into your system. But when you don't have enough lactase in your body, the lactose sugar moves into the large intestine and that bacteria have a big party. And then you get the bloating and the diarrhea and all that. So yes, it's the dairy, but it's more about your body not being able to break it down and bacteria having a party with it. So by the way, lactose intolerance is a spectrum. Some people can't have a little bit of dairy and, they're running to the bathroom. But for most of us, it's about how much dairy, right? That's another difference between food allergies and food sensitivities or intolerances. With an allergy, if I have a peanut allergy, I can't have any, even a little bit, I'm going to have a reaction. With food sensitivities and intolerances, it's about how much. So maybe I can have a little bit of milk in my coffee, but if I also have a cheesecake, it will send me running. The reason I'm telling you that, because sometimes it gets confusing. Like, do I have lactose intolerance? Because sometimes I could have milk and sometimes I can't. So yes, you could have lactose intolerance and still be able to tolerate some milk because it's volume-based, like how much of an exposure. So I just want to clarify that. Sometimes people get confused with that. So while we're on the topic of food intolerances, let's talk about food sensitivities. Again, a different category. We have the allergies. Right? I'm allergic, I have peanuts, I have a reaction, I need Benadryl. That's an IgE response. We have intolerances. which is just a different pathway. Then we have sensitivity. And not to get too technical on it, but sensitivity is something called IgG. And these are foods that give us an immune response, but not the itchy, runny nose kind. It causes stomach pain, headaches, body symptoms, and it's delayed. I can have the eggplant now and have a headache later. These are the foods that give us a different kind of immune response. They're delayed. And this is important because understanding that there's more ways for your body to react to food besides an allergy is important, because you can go to the allergist and be completely negative, right? So it's really important for you to understand that allergies is one thing, sensitivities is another thing. There is a test, there is a company, again, not affiliated, called Cyrix Labs, but it's costly. So if you don't have to do it, you could do a food diary. A food diary is much cheaper, but if you hit a wall, it's a good place to go next. I also want to take a moment back to our microbiome. We're making a list of things that could be causing your IBS symptoms. We have to talk about sugar alcohols. Okay, sugar alcohols, those are the things in your sweeteners, the sugar-free sweeteners, xylitol, mannitol, sorbitol. They can mess with your body. If you eat actual sugar, I'm not telling you to go eat sugar, but when you eat sugar, it gets absorbed in the small intestine and then processed. When you eat the sugar-free sweeteners, they don't get digested in the small bowel. They end up going to the large intestine. And again, that bacteria cycle, they eat them, they off-gas, diarrhea, etc. And again, this is a spectrum. You may be able to handle some sweeteners, but if you eat a lot, it's a wrap. So every time, if you're one of those people that every single time, you're doing the right thing, you're trying to be on a diet, you get yourself all this sugar-free stuff, and every time you have sugar-free something, your belly hurts. Listen to your belly. It's telling you it can't handle the sugar alcohol, okay? So, and again, it's a spectrum. So you might be able to handle one snack or one sugar-free gum, and then as soon as you go to the next one, it's a mess. So pay attention to that. Okay, so we're starting to understand that IBS is a collection of symptoms, but these symptoms have causes: food sensitivity, food intolerances, microbiome issues, SIBO, right? It's not just random syndrome of collection of symptoms. There's a reason why you feel this way. And what you need to do is find the offending agent and repair the microbiome so that there is a balance. Now, before I get to that last piece of how do we do it, some of you might be saying, who cares? So my stomach hurts. What's the big deal, right? It goes away after a little while. Why is there a whole episode on this? Who cares, right? IBS is a super big deal, the symptoms of IBS, because that discomfort that you're feeling, that inflammation doesn't stop at your belly. And we're so used to going to specialists. One person does GI, one person does your nose, one person does, your shoulder, that we forget it's all connected. So when you have inflammation in your belly, yeah, you might feel better a half hour from now, but it just started an inflammatory cascade everywhere in your body. So now you have headache, arthritis, asthma, immune issues. You're moody, you're less focused, you have hormonal issues. It's all connected. So fixing your belly it's the beginning, it's the essential part of fixing the whole system. That's why when patients come in with all these issues, I can't focus, my joints hurt, all these things, we start at the gut because we know that's the main source of inflammation. So don't ignore it, don't push through it, don't say, oh, it's fine. You must treat it. So how do we treat it? How do we treat it? Treating it depends on what's causing it. And this is critical, right? Because when you get an IBS diagnosis, there's no cure for it because it's just IBS, because you don't delve into the cause. But when you dig deep and find out, oh, maybe I have a food sensitivity, or maybe my microbiome is off, now we can know how to fix it. So let's just do some easy stuff. If you're lactose intolerant, you stop eating dairy. If you're sensitive to those sweeteners, you stop eating them. And if we're talking about a microbiome issue, then it's a little trickier, right? Because it's not as simple as just stop eating the thing. But it's also not as simple as just taking a probiotic. In fact, for some people, it might make things worse. So there's a 5R protocol. I did not invent it, but we use it all the time. And we remove, we replace, we inoculate, we repair, we rebalance. Let me tell you what I mean. So removing means that elimination diet I told you about. But removal also means removing the pathogens or the toxins. So if you have SIBO, you have to take antibiotics. If you have H. pylori, you have to take antibiotics. You have to remove the stuff that is triggering, calm things down. And then you replace. Some people might need digestive enzymes. Some people might need acid for their bellies. So you have to replace what's missing. By the way, I told you this earlier. If you have bloating right after your meal, you probably have a low acid issue, hypochlorhydria. If you bloat a few hours later, that may signal a low enzyme issue. So you might need some pancreatic enzymes. This is why I told you to write down, how much time passes before you get your symptoms. So replacing is really individual to the symptoms, but the symptoms mean something. That's what's really important. Now, when things are calm and repaired, that is a really good time to re-inoculate with probiotic. Because if you start too early, you're going to make a mess. You're going to feel worse. So there is a timing here. Repair, you have to start repairing the damage done to the lining. And each person needs different supplements from collagen, short-chain fatty acids, vitamin A. So you remove the offending foods, you take time to repair, and then you slowly reintroduce some or rebalance. Reintroducing means you can slowly bring certain things back. You may not be as sensitive when things calm down, although there might be some things that are just in the red list, you can never have it. And rebalance means, okay, now my belly feels good. I'm managing stress. My sleep's on point. You want to do more than just focus on those symptoms. But order is really important because if you have overgrowth of bacteria in the wrong place and you just think a probiotic's going to make it better, it's not. It's probably going to make it worse. Okay. So, order is important. Removing and then replacing and then re-inoculating is really important. So you want to just kind of do it in an order. Don't haphazardly just randomly take supplements. So here's the bottom line. IBS is not an acceptable diagnosis. Of course, your symptoms are real. Of course, they're real. It's just getting that label does nothing to help you. I've just listed so many possibilities of why you have your IBS. And there's more possibilities. This is, I can't go on forever, especially with the way I'm breathing today. So the point is, go to your, medical provider, get the tests, colonoscopy, the endoscopy. If you get the diagnosis of IBS, don't get frustrated. It's really good news that you don't have anything really bad to deal with. But then you have to move on to another provider. And either you work with me and my team or another functional medicine provider and find the root cause of what's actually going on. Once you find the root cause of what's going on, then you can actually fix it. I hope this helps. So, take this, use this, become the game changer in your life, give this to someone to become the game changer in their life. And whatever it is, you're here because you always knew there was a better way. I'll see you guys next week.